Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Falcon Spotlight. I'm your host, Rob Flores, here on WPMD Studios, located in Norwalk, California. At this time, I'd like my guest to please introduce himself.
Good morning, Rob. Daniel Clayeros, Chief of Police for the City of Vernon.
Excellent. Now, the one thing I like to do, like when I have my guest also, is to start from the beginning, tell their story. During like K-12, what were some of your interests? Were you involved in anything on there?
Actually, and I went to a private school, but played some sports. Had a number of siblings that we were involved in, just the local community and so forth. But what piqued my interest in law enforcement was, as a kid, every year the firefighters and local police department would come down to the school and provide us, a presentation on their job and so forth. So, as a young child, that really piqued an interest. Actually, my initial interest was a firefighter, but as I got a little older, the public safety, law enforcement was my main goal.
And then after high school, did you know what was the path you were going to take? What college? What degree?
Actually, Rob, after high school, I actually had a couple odd jobs. I worked at a fabric company for a couple of years. I worked at a service station, pumping gas, as you would say, full service back in the day. Law enforcement was an interest, and I actually didn't finish my college degree until I was hired at law enforcement. It took me many years to finish my education. I did it kind of backwards. I should have obtained my degree before getting into this kind of work, but I started but never finished. But several years ago, I was able to finish my bachelor's degree.
Excellent. And what was the biggest struggle when you tried to take your classes again? Like I know that sometimes, like for me, I left math for last, and that was very tough.
Well, you're not the only one that left math for last. I did the same thing. I was in the same boat. Actually, for me, it was a challenge. Trying to work a full-time job and then go to school after work or on my days off. So when I worked actually the patrol field, I actually took days off during the week so I can take some classes at a local college and finish my degree. So I did work the weekends on occasion just to chip away slowly at my education. And I, like you, math was my last course, but I took a course at Cal State Long Beach and crash course and finished my math there.
And then originally, you were mentioning earlier that you had a different major in mind.
Yes, I did. Actually, I didn't have a criminal justice major. Business was my major. Took several classes in that field. For law enforcement, I wouldn't recommend focusing a major in criminal justice. Our work is very physical. It's a physically demanding job, I would say. And sometimes, we have officers that get injured on duty and don't finish their career off. With our department, they retire on a medical. So I would suggest to have something degree to fall back on in case you can no longer do the job in law enforcement. You have something else to fall back on. Business or psychology. But criminal justice classes actually that information we provided to any law enforcement officer at the beginning during the academy. I would say that's where you take quite a few criminal justice classes. So I wouldn't focus too much on those type of classes at this point.
Now, recently I actually took a course for CERT, and I was wondering also, as far as the first aid, do you guys what kind of training do you guys have to?
Well, first aid CPR, we do that every 2 years. Certification to have that on file. Yeah, all officers are required to have their skills up to par. Perishable skills every 2 years. So we do the first aid and CPR certification, and we also have the AED device that provides the electric shock for a victim who may be suffering a heart attack. We do that every year. In our agency, for example, we have the AED device We have 2 out in the field in the east and west sector of town. So should we receive a call for someone having a heart attack, that officer who has that device will respond to the scene immediately with that device and render first aid. It's a great tool. I would recommend those who have the ability to access those. It's a great tool to have in case someone should need that kind of resource. I don't know if Cerritos here has that type of equipment here, but something to maybe ponder down the road.
Cool. And one of the things I was amazed too is when I interviewed some deputies was, the variety of different degrees that the different officers actually have.
Oh yeah, so a lot of our guys don't have a degree in criminal justice. They have psychology, business. There's a physical education degree. There's sociology. There's an array of different degrees that our guys have, and gals as well. But like I mentioned, you need something to have something to fall back on in case you can no longer do the job, and also too have something that when after you retire from law enforcement, there's something else for you to do. There's a new chapter in life, and it gives you the opportunity to do something that you've always wanted to do aside from law enforcement.
Excellent. Now, your city is pretty unique in the sense that it's a different environment. Tell me about that.
Yes, our city is primarily an industrial city, very similar to the city of Industry and Irwindale. We don't have the high residential population. Actually, our population is, I would say, approximately about 300 residents, now that we have a new apartment complex on our east end of town. But prior to that, we had about 110 residents. Throughout your regular business day, we have about 50,000 in population, but that's workers that that visit, that work at the companies there in Vernon, or visitors that are coming through the city. So it's a very unique city. But if you ask me, the law enforcement, I think we provide the same level of law enforcement as any residential community. The only difference is that we don't have the high volume of calls related to domestic violence, loud music, and so forth. But the level of work is still the same as any other residential community. Our major crimes deal with property crimes, auto theft, and so forth, but we don't have those significant issues with quality of life issues such as gang activity, domestic violence, those type of calls.
Excellent. And also, you guys have the council meetings and so forth. When do you have to, when are those ones?
Our council meetings are a little different too as well. We do have a 5-member council board, but our council meetings are held during the day, not in the evening. They're held the first and third Tuesday of the month, and it's at 9 o'clock in the morning. Our council meetings. And it was changed many years ago, and it actually allows the business community to attend the council meetings. Many businesses, as you know, close up shop at 5, 6 o'clock. Back in the day, many years ago, we had our council meetings, I believe it was at 5:30. So attendance was not the greatest, but once they did change the hour to the morning at 9 o'clock, we do get quite a few members from our business community that attends our council meetings, as well as some residents on occasion.
Excellent. And also, of course, I always like to have my guests, plug their organization. They're obviously here for your department. You guys on social media? Do you guys have a website and stuff?
We do have a Facebook page, Vernon Police Department. We have one of our sergeants assigned to manage our Facebook page as well as some social media. And we are hiring. As many others police departments in our region are hiring. We have 4 vacancies right now, and for law enforcement, and 1 for a community service officer position that we're trying to fill. Actually, it just opened up. So if you go to the City of Vernon website under the Human Resources tab, you'll see the current postings for jobs that are available.
Excellent. We'll be right back after this quick break.
So you took a 5-minute break?
No, it's
We realize that the most significant artists in the history of rock and roll deserve to have their most significant work play
I was
from
wondering why it
beginning to
wasn't playing
end.
before. It was
So,
the wrong
we-
little
Oh, it was the ones.
Oh.
Hey everybody, I'm Casey Petrowski. For more years than most of us can remember, the amazing story of
Yeah,
the Beatles
sometimes-
has been unfolding in front of us.
It's like somebody put in the wrong slot or something?
Yeah.
Bit by
No
bit
wonder
on the
the-
Beatles show. And we
the
give it to
station
you
ID
8 days
wasn't
a week
playing
here on
before.
WPMD. New episodes every Tuesday
Because normally
night
it'll,
Pacific,
it'll say,
classic episodes
at
every
the hour
morning at 8
it'll go to
Pacific.
the ID.
Hear what all the mania for the last 50 years has been about.
Do you
Join
want,
us
we
for the
can
Beatles
talk
show
about the
here
resources
on
about
WPMD on
parks
the
and stuff,
net.
that things we don't have in Vernon.
Make a
Talk about the
difference.
cities we have.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's
All
see.
right, great.
Rock and roll had a glorious history, and you can relive the early days of it every night at 10 Pacific on the Steve Probst 45 show. Steve plays the great sides, well known or not, and talks with the legends that made them. To give you a look at rock's formative years like you've never heard before. It's the best of Steve Probst 45 show. Every night at 10 Pacific, only on WPMD, where people make a difference.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends.
In biology,
In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell.
I'm a loser.
In chemistry, I learned that no one
In
likes me.
biology,
In chemistry,
I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in
One is
school
like
today,
30
the
seconds,
only
I
thing I
think,
didn't
then
learn
there's
today.
60
I didn't
seconds.
learn.
Just
Really?
That's why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every
Do
day.
you guys
They
receive
want
money
to
for
help,
having
but they
these
don't
type
know
of
how.
commercial
Teach them
breaks?
how to stop bullying and
I'm
be
not
more
sure.
than
I
a
mean, my
bystander
advisor
at
takes care of everything.
stopbullying.gov, a message from
But
the Ad Council.
we'll also promote like stuff going on the campus as
Oh, I
well.
see.
And we are back here on the Falcon Spotlight, ladies and gentlemen, here at Norwalk, California, Cerritos College. Now we are here with our guest, the Vernon Police Chief. Now, again, we were talking about how, your city is very unique. It looks a lot different. Tell me more.
Well, actually, our city is very unique. We don't have the resources, I would per se say, like your residential community, like parks and community centers and so forth. We do have a local school, Vernon Elementary. That's through the LA Unified District that we support regularly. We actually stop by every day, two times a day. Our guys will stop by and see how things are going at the school. We also provide a DARE program there since I would say going back in the late 90s, and we still provide it on an annual basis. The Drug Abuse and Recognition Education Program, better known as DARE. I think we're the only ones in the region that still do it. We dedicate, we have a couple officers that are trained in that area, and they rotate every year, and they provide that training and education to the local students. Actually, they're getting ready to finish out the program. Usually they're done by early May.
And, speaking of, getting into the field, I heard that back in the day there used to be a height requirement. Tell me about the early days.
Actually, you're right, Rob. Back when I started in the late 80s, but the officers who were there before I was hired were hired, early 80s and not 70s. But they from what I was told, there was a height requirement. I think it was 6 feet and above. But we did have quite a few tall officers when I started the job. But that has since changed. Many years ago, I think back when I was hired, because there was no height restriction when I was hired. No, we take anyone that's interested in the field. There is no height restrictions.
And what are the requirements to get in?
Well, basically, you have to have a college or GED requirement, California driver's license, of course, and have a clean background. That's been one of our issues, is trying to hire people in public safety, is the background. The major issues that we're dealing with is having a criminal background and so forth, drug usage and those type of areas. So I would suggest stay out of trouble, and if you're looking in that kind of arena or job, we are looking for men and women that have a good background.
And once they pass the background check and everything like that, what's the next step?
Well, typically the first step would be to take a written exam. Once you get through the written exam, then the applications are screened, and then they're invited to a interview process. And if they are successful in that process, then they're placed into the background process, where it takes. Now that's a very lengthy process. It takes several months to look at your education, your talk with your neighbors, your background as far as criminal history and so forth, your previous employers. We're looking at character and those type of areas to see what kind of person the applicant is, and if that individual, male or female, meets our standards for the department.
And like the physical fitness and stuff, like are there like tests and stuff? What kind of exercises do they have?
Yes,
to
there
do?
is. Actually, I left that out. There is a physical fitness test that is conducted right after the written exam. They're given a test to be able to drag a dummy for a certain amount of distance. There is some running for I think it's a quarter of a mile, getting over a block wall, a fence wall, and so forth. So you have to go through that process. We actually use Rio Hondo College for that testing process. And actually, those who are interested to see what the testing is about, I believe they have it once a month on Sundays. And if you go to Rio Hondo College, they use their track area to do the testing. So the block wall is already there to practice on. The fence is there as well. So and then you can run around the track and kind of time yourself.
And I was wondering also, like, once you become an officer, like, is it like, obviously sometimes people get a misconception when they see TV and stuff, but are they all required to like have a partner, or is it just like when they go out on the streets and stuff?
No, not required to have partners. In our department, for example, we run single men and women cars. On occasion, depending on our staffing levels, if we have quite a few individuals working on a specific day, we'll put two people together in one car. But typically, they're by themselves. But when they conduct traffic enforcement or any kind of stops, there's always another officer that is sent to help out, just to be an extra set of eyes. So there's always two individuals together, male or female.
And tell me about the different types of departments and positions.
Well, in our department, we're not a very large agency. I would call us, more of a smaller agency. Right now, we have sworn. We have 42 officers that are budgeted, and we have about 12 that are non-sworn. That's our dispatchers, our records clerks, and so forth. A court officer, but we do have a K-9 program, a motor unit as well, and we have. Right now, we have one officer assigned to a task force that deals with narcotics enforcement. Right now we have a couple of spots that we have not filled for another task force that we're part of in the region. It's a cargo theft investigation team. Because of our staffing levels, we've kept that spot vacant for now, but once we get back on track with our staffing levels, we'll be putting that member back on the team. But for our size, we don't have a SWAT team or any type of arson teams and so forth. We reach out to the sheriff's department for that resource, should we need it. But given our size, I think we have quite a bit of resources, specifically the K-9 and more units to help keep traffic at a minimum.
And how about like ranking and stuff like that? How does that work?
Ranking, well, I would say the first line is your police officer. Our detectives are not considered a rank. That's a special assignment, I would say, an assignment for a 3-year period, and we rotate our staff out. 3+1. The longest you can stay in a detective position, the longest you can stay in that position is 4 years, and you have to rotate out back to patrol. The next level from there would be we do have a corporals that program that we just implemented, and then you have your sergeant, And after your sergeant, we have the lieutenant, who's now considered in the management field, the captain, and then the chief of police. So there is, several steps to get up to the top position.
And to do so, like, is it written tests and stuff like that? How does that work?
Yes, there's a written test for to move up from officer to a corporal position. There's a testing process for that, as well as a sergeant. There's a written test and a interview process for that. Lieutenant, same thing. Written and a interview. Captain, we just have a it's based on appointment, but we do have an interview process for the captain position.
Cool. Tell me about your journey, how you got all the way to the chief.
To the top job. Well, I've been there for 28 years. During my career, I've been very fortunate to be given that opportunity to be the chief of police here in Vernon. But I started at the bottom. I started as an officer back in '88 and worked my way up through the ranks. I took advantage of any opportunity that I was given, for assignments and so forth. Field training officer, detective, did that for a couple of years. Tested for the position of sergeant. Was successful the second time around, not the first time. But I moved up the ranks over the years. But I think what really helped me was taking advantage of all the opportunities and working at different assignments and getting a good understanding of the operations of the entire police department, from overseeing our records department, our dispatch center, our detective bureau, our professional standards office, conducting patrol investigations, overseeing our grants program, our asset forfeiture program. So over the years, I had the opportunity to work practically every assignment and division that we have in the department. So it gave me a good understanding of the entire operations of the police department. And then late in my career, I did have the opportunity to work with our former chief with the budget, and that was an eye-opener. I didn't realize, the true cost of our personnel and benefits, and how to best manage the checkbook for the police department per se. As a chief of police, our job is to manage the budget as best we can. Where the city provides a specific budget for the PD, and we have to stay within that amount per year. Because at the end of the day, if we go over budget, then the question is what happened. Why are we over? But there's things that do happen. We do have officers that do get injured on duty, and we have to supplement staffing with overtime and so forth. But we try to do the best with what we're allotted for the year, and work with our staff to make sure that we stay within that window of revenue that's been provided.
Cool. And also, with the different positions, like, do the hours vary? Like, I've heard that, like, dispatch, like, they probably work, like, even, like, maybe overnight, right?
Yes, we actually, our dispatchers, I think we're the only ones in our region that work a 13-hour shift, actually. They work 3 days and off 4, but they work 2 days, 13 and a half hours, and their last third day is a 13-hour shift. But they work, there's only 2 shifts for dispatch. There's a day shift and a night shift. But they have 4 days off. It's a great job for, single mothers, because you have 4 days off to spend with your kids or a family. I mean, you have 4 days to spend with your family. But then again, when you have more time off, you actually spend more money, right? You go shopping and have more time to spend the money. But dispatchers is a great job, but it's a challenging job as well, because they handle all the calls that come in for service, and sometimes there's some pretty critical calls that do come in through dispatch, because they are the first contact for law enforcement. When you have an emergency situation that occurs out in public, the first number they call is 911, and that's our dispatchers that receive that call. Our patrol shift works a similar schedule. It's a 12 and a half hour shift with one payback, a 10-hour payback per month. So our patrol staff works 3 days and off 4. And 1 day a month they come back and work a 10-hour shift to make up that difference. Records division works a 10-hour shift, 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. That's a pretty fixed schedule, and our detective bureau works the same schedule, 4 days and 3 days off. But they're typically available for after-hours calls. So we have a significant incident, detective bureau is usually called to handle that investigation. Our admin staff is same thing. We work a 10-hour shift, Monday through Thursday. So it's a very great schedule for if you're looking for that type of environment.
Are there any situations where you have to do overtime?
Oh yes, there's a number of situations where you have to do overtime, and depending on the incident itself, or it's a call for service that's towards the end of your shift that requires an arrest, or maybe it's a case where it involves a good suspect information. It's a felony case. The officer will have to stay over and complete the report, so it's available for our detective bureau to handle the follow-up investigation. But it's not that often, I would say. But the officers are required to work overtime.
And obviously sometimes all we get to know is like what's like on TV, like the CSI and all them other shows. But like, what's the process like when like someone gets like taken in?
To custody, actually for us, we actually book all of our inmates at the Huntington Park Police Department. Our jail facility is only considered a temporary holding facility. We can only hold someone there for a maximum of 12 hours. If they have to spend the night or the weekend to go to court, we transport that individual to Huntington Park Police for jail booking. But basically what the process is, they come in, they're taken to the jail facility, they're screened for any other contraband on their person, and photographs are taken, fingerprints are rolled, and those go through the state and FBI database for verification, and they're housed overnight. Typically, if it's a felony case, they're housed until they go to court within 48 hours. Misdemeanor cases are typically, depending on the case itself, they're just cited and released. But if they go through a process of being booked, the fingerprints and photos are taken, and their information is put into the LA County system.
And then sometimes we'll have our phones where like there's like the buzzing thing, and it'll say like a car description. Can you like explain that? The Amber Alert thing.
Oh, the Amber Alert.
Yeah.
Yes, that's specific to critical missing individuals. Typically, it's called the silver tooth, elderly individuals that have some medical conditions, and a kidnapping case involving a young child and so forth. That information is put through a database system that's managed by the California Highway Patrol, and that when that is, but there's specific requirements to enter someone into the Amber Alert system. So it's not on every case. It has to meet the requirements for an Amber Alert. Typically, it's a critical missing or kidnapping, that type of case. But it goes through the California Highway Patrol, and it sends the alert out to. You see it on the freeways, right? The message signs as well as the cell phones. It goes out.
What about the requirements for someone to be considered missing?
It's typically it's juveniles that are under a specific age, and adults that are critical missing. You have an elderly person who's taking their medication on a regular basis for their health, and they're having some mental issues and so forth. So those are kind of the most frequent or common Amber Alerts that are in the system. Or your typical kidnapping as well too. That when they have good information on the vehicle itself, they put that out there.
How about the process when two people get into a major car accident?
It's just if it's a major car accident, our staff will go out and conduct the investigation, and if there's any major injuries, depending on the severity of the injuries, it's handled accordingly. If we foresee that there could be a death involved, then our detectives are called out to handle that investigation as well, because the potential for vehicular manslaughter charges being sought against one of the parties if we can show that there was some negligence on driver, one of the drivers involved. But it's a pretty lengthy investigation, those type of incidents, when there's severe injuries.
So throughout the year, you know how you mentioned you guys had to train in first aid and stuff. Are there like meetings where like all the different city polices have to meet and stuff, or like is there like a conference or something?
Yes, there is quite a few conferences for law enforcement, but they're specific to the job responsibilities. You have the narcotics task force conferences, and even for the chief of police, there's a conferences as well. But the detective investigators conference, and so there's a number. But if you ask me about training, yeah, all officers are required to receive training every 2 years, but it's specific to requirements by the peace officers training and standards in California, better known as POST. That they have to have at the minimum of 24 hours of training in specific areas every 2 years. But we provide above and beyond the minimum of 24. But the initial 24 hours deals with use of force, firearms training, high pursuit speed driving, tactical communication is required. So those are kind of the basic requirements for that are mandated by POST every 2 years. And there's a cycle. Actually, we're in our second year cycle now, so we have to have all that specific training done by December of this year. And then come January of 2017, the 2-year cycle starts again. So we repeat that training again. But that just that doesn't even include your required first aid, CPR, and other task related training. For example, if we have a new sergeant that's been promoted, then he'll have to meet the 24-hour requirement in addition to attend specific classes that are for a new supervisor. So that's another 80 hours of training in that specific field. So quite a bit of training that our officers received on an annual basis. The bare minimum that's required. Plus, we also provide any other interest they might have in training to keep them up to par with current case law and so forth.
Yeah, there's a recently I got to complete the CERT training, community emergency response team training. I didn't realize all the different types of how important it is to be prepared like in the event of like a disaster and stuff like that, and how essential first aid is.
Yeah, you're very correct there, Rob. It's having community members trained in CERT is vital to many communities, because in a major disaster, a major earthquake, many communities will not have the resources available. So you'll be basically you're on your own for the first 72 hours. So if you have the specific training